Good morning, everybody. So because we missed last week, Parsha Shemot, which is the beginning of the second book of the 5 books of the Torah, today we're going to do a combination of both Torah portions. So snippets from each Torah portion, because I couldn't choose which one had better insights and beautiful stories, so I decided we're going to do both. And also, it's very important to gain insight into what happens in the beginning of the book of Shemot. So we're going to dive right in. So the book of Shemot, which was last week's Torah portion, starts off with the story of, the story of the holiday of Passover. The Jews are in the land of Egypt. Remember, Jacob came down with the 12 tribes. Joseph was already there, the viceroy of Egypt. That generation passes away. The Jewish people get larger. The Israelites nation grows larger and larger, and a new Paro comes into ruling, a tyrant, evil, horrible person, and he begins to enslave the Jewish people. And this is where the Torah portion of Shemos opens up. And I'm going to go through the story very quickly, and then we're going to, like I mentioned, delve into some of the very magnificent insights and questions, lots of questions. So they're oppressed. Paro makes a decree. All baby boys are to be thrown into the Nile River and killed because he has a vision, a dream that there's going to be a young boy born that's going to overthrow his kingdom. And we all know who that is, everybody. Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu. The Jewish people don't listen. They have many children. We're not going to go into those details now because I've mentioned very, very many times that it is the strength and the fortitude of the Jewish women of that generation that allowed them to leave Egypt. More about that a little later or another time. And Moses grows up, and then he has to run away from Egypt because he kills an Egyptian guard, and somebody tattles on him, one of his Jewish brethren actually, and he runs away to Midian. There he meets his future wife Zipporah, remember, one of the 7 daughters of Jethro. Then he's out shepherding. He loses a little sheep, and the famous story of the burning bush, the thorn bush that's burning. And we fast forward to the second Torah portion, Vayera. Here, Moses has already gone to Paro multiple times with threats of plagues, 1 plague, 2 plagues, and Paro, of course, refuses to let the Jewish people go. There's the plague of blood, there's the plague of lice, there's the plague of wild animals, the plague of fire and ice, and Paro's heart is hardened. This is the summation of the 2 Torah portions. And it's funny because, we studied this together last year, and as I was studying it this year, I saw newer and even more interesting, deeper insights into what's happening throughout these Torah portions. So let's start off with something that always is a very small story, but we love to teach it to the children. It's the story of Moses and the basket, right? You know the story of Moshe and the basket. So who wants to fill in the story? Why is he in a basket? Is he a basket case? What's the story? Anybody want to tell the story? Share? Don't be shy. You can't make it. Go ahead.
Floating in the river, right?
Okay, why?
Because his parents want him to live, and they're afraid. They think that if the Pharaoh's daughter finds him and raises him, then he'll be safe. But his mother ended up being a nursemaid
for him. Okay.
Right.
Anybody else want to add? Diane? Jane?
Sure. Can't see. I think it was his sister who watched the basket go down the Nile and watched the Pharaoh's daughter find it.
Beautiful. Yes. Anybody,
right.
any more interesting memories of the story?
Well, when Miriam followed the basket to make sure her brother didn't drown, she saw Pharaoh's daughter take the baby, and she said, "I know a perfect person who could take care of your baby," and that was her.
And then so his own mother ended up raising him. So actually, if you look at the story in detail, it's a very small segment of the Torah portion, but the daughter of Paro is the heroine of this story. Think if she wouldn't have gone and saved Moshe. Good morning, Jolene. Think if she would have said to herself, envision that her name is not the daughter of Paro. Her name is the daughter of Hitler. May his name be erased. The daughter of Stalin. Imagine she is the princess of the daughter of the king. And he made a decree that any baby boy born to Israelite Jews must be killed, drowned. So Moshe is put at the edge of the river, and I'm pointing out the edge of the river. Everyone thinks he was put into the river. He was put on the edge of the river, and I'll explain in a minute. And lo and behold, the daughter of Paro, the Torah is not even calling her by a name. Cleopatra, whatever her name, Pocahontas, who knows? And it says the daughter of Paro was bathing in the Nile, and from it she sees a baby in a basket, and she sees him crying. Notice the Torah says she sees him crying, not she hears him crying. And she stretches out her hand, and she brings in the baby, and she, like Margaret said, she calls him Moshe, which means drawn from the water, and she raises him as her own son with the help of Yocheved, the Jewish nursemaid, because Moses refuses to nurse from any of her nursemaids. So she realizes, we need a Jewish nursemaid. Now I have a few questions for you. Why is she bathing in the river suddenly? Okay, say it's a coincidence, divine providence, she decided to take a bath. Why does it say Moses is at the edge of the river? His mother puts him at the edge of the river, and next thing we know, he's in the river. How did she know he was Jewish? Maybe he was a baby, a teenage mother didn't want him, and put him into the basket. How did she know he was Jewish?
Was he circumcised?
Very good. The Mepharshim say she saw he was circumcised. The Egyptians didn't circumcise. And then how do you see somebody crying? Don't you hear them crying? And also the Torah portion says her maidservant, her Amma, went into the water and got the basket. How do we surmise that she stretched out her hand and got the basket? So let's put the whole story together. So going backwards, James says she saw he was circumcised. Very good. That's how she knew he was a Jewish baby. And by the way, didn't she know about her father's decree? So she understood there's a baby in the basket, there's a Jewish mother who hopes someone will find him and save him and he won't be killed along with the other Jewish babies. Why was she bathing in the river? So you could say she went to take a bath. That's true. But I would think a princess would have one of those beautiful claw. So the Torah says something very magnificent in the commentaries. She was very, very, very miserable. Lack of a better word, if anyone has a better adjective, and hated what her father was doing. She saw his cruelty, and she wanted no part of his life, actually. She was bathing because the Nile River was an idol of the Egyptians. They had many idols. One of them was the Nile River. They worshiped the Nile River. You weren't allowed to go swimming in the Nile River. It was like a sacred waters. Lo and behold, if you were caught bathing in the Nile River, so she went to bathe in the Nile River to show that she does not believe this is idolatry. She doesn't believe that the Nile River is a god. She doesn't believe in this baloney. So by bathing, she's kind of making, she's sending a message. I don't believe that the Nile River is an idol, is a god. Quite the contrary, it's a river. So when Moshe's mother, Yocheved, who was a prophetess herself, wants to put her baby, save her son, she can't put her baby in the Nile River. It's an idol. By putting her baby in the river, she doesn't want to take a child like Moshe, whose face was aglow, who she named Tuvia, which means good, because she saw he was something special. He had a light. She said, I can't put my baby into their object of idolatry, so she puts him at the edge of the river. After Batya bathes, the basket slips into the water, and now Moshe is in the river, so to speak. Now he can be in the river, because there's an interesting law that if a person has an object of idolatry, and then they negate it, and they say, no, this is no longer an object of idolatry, that idol is nullified. So she nullifies the Nile River. An interesting insight, isn't it? And why? Because she really ends up being part of the Jewish people. You know that she marries Kalev ben Yefunah, one of the 12 spies. Remember, the spies were sent into Israel to check out the land and see if it's good, how to capture. She marries Kalev, and God names her Batya. She's called the daughter of Paro, but after she saves Moshe, she's called Batya, which means daughter of God. God says to her, you saved my child, and now I'm going to make you a daughter of Israel. You're going to become my child. Batya, daughter of God. You saved mine, now I'm going to call you my daughter. So Batya becomes, later on, she leaves with the Jewish people. She marries Kalev. She becomes part of the Jewish nation. Nobody knows the story because it's in the commentaries. Now, what's the story with the hand? So did she reach out for Moshe, or did her nursemaid, did her maiden, her maidservant reach out? Alma means maidservant. The commentaries jump in and say no. Alma also means measurement, hand. She stretched out her hand to grab the basket. But the commentaries note that the basket was very far away. Imagine you're swimming in the Saugatuck Shores, in the Long Island Sound, the Atlantic Ocean. You see crying, you see a basket. You stretch out, really, you're going to stretch out your hand miles away? Isn't it a exercise in futility? And the answer is no. When she stretched out her hand, I have to save this baby, God turned her hand into like a silly putty. Remember the olden days, they had like Dumbo, you stretched a hand and she was able to grasp the basket. Her hand became elasticized. Now, why is it so important for us to know? Great story, because there's a message here, like we always say, that when you make an attempt and you think to yourself, why do I bother? What is my $10 going to help this organization or this person who is struggling to pay their bills? Do they really need me? Can somebody else do it? The smarter people, better people who can do that job, who can help those people, who can take on this task. We don't want to try sometimes because the task seems too daunting. It's too far away. It's too hard. I don't have experience in this area. I don't know how to be compassionate. I'm generally a cool person. I'm an aloof person. I'm not the type to give someone a hug. But when you make an effort, it doesn't matter if it's an insurmountable goal. God will do the rest. God will fill in, so to speak, and get you and allow you to stretch beyond your wildest expectations. So never think to yourself, I can't do this. Let me get 10 other people to help me. Imagine if Batya would have said, I need my troops to help me. Let's go get the lifeguards, the first aid. Let's go get Baywatch, the rescuers. Forget it. Who knows what would have happened to Moshe by the time she got her rescue committee out there in their motorboat. She reached out almost instinctively. I have to save this baby. And she saved him. And that's what it means. She saw him crying. She saw his pain. Sometimes you don't hear a person cry. They come into the room, they come into your house, you meet them in the store, they're with you in school, wherever you are. And you see in them a pain. They're not crying. You see the body language. You don't hear them. They didn't say to you, I'm having a miserable day. I'm going through a tremendous ordeal. I can't even begin to tell you what's going in my life. But you see the body language and you go over and you're like, can I talk to you for a minute? I noticed you seem a little down and out. Is anything happening that you want to talk to me about? You don't hear them. Many times people don't even want to share. They're in so much pain, or they don't know how to share, or they think nobody cares. Batya saw his tears before she heard his tears. She saw a baby in distress. They did a study of children in orphanages. Don't cry. Infants in orphanages, you know why they don't cry? Because when they came into the orphanage, this is a study I read, they cried and cried and cried and cried for hours. They were hungry, the diapers were wet, and no one came. So after 3-4 days of crying, they stopped crying. They realized crying will do me nothing. So they come in, there's hundreds of babies, all starving, all wet, and they're not crying.
Yes.
Because they were trained that when you cry, nobody comes. So sometimes people don't cry. A child during the Nazis was told, don't you cry, cry quietly. You cry, it's the end of your life. 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds were taught you cannot utter a cry. You have to think your cry, hold your cry. And as adults, they told stories. They don't know how to cry. Like Eli Wiesel, my father brought him to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said to him one day, what could I do for you? He says, Rebbe, could you teach me how to cry? I don't know how to cry even.
Oh.
It says, I'll teach you how to cry if you allow me to teach you how to laugh and smile. Then I'll teach you to cry. Because crying has to come with laughter. So she saw Moshe cries. She didn't hear, she saw his cries. And another commentary says, maybe Moshe was taught not to cry in a sense because they hid him. Remember, he was born prematurely at 7 months, and then they put him in the basket when he was 2 months old, because then the guards knew that she's about to have birth. They kept track of your pregnancies. It was horrible what went on. So Moshe now is the prince of Egypt. Imagine a Jewish boy is now the grandson of Paro, adopted grandson of Paro. Something spectacular. So does anybody want to add anything or say anything, or I didn't mean to go on without including you. Does anybody want to add a comment or a...
Well, did they know in Pharaoh's household that he was Jewish when he was growing up? I mean, because you think that when she came back with a Jewish baby, it would not be too cool.
I know. So I thought about that and I looked up the commentaries, and she claimed it was her baby. She, as the princess, says he's my son.
Well, Pharaoh wasn't changing diapers anyway, so maybe he didn't know.
A princess of Paro, a daughter of Paro, wields a tremendous amount of power. No one's messing with her. No one's messing with her. But that's why the story with the coals and the gold, remember the story? He shines as a toddler. There's something brilliant about him. So Paro starts thinking to himself, one minute, let me check out this scene. Maybe he's the boy from the dream, from the prophecy that there's going to be a boy going to usurp me. So what does he do?
Wow.
He's playing with Moshe on his lap, like a Zaidi, not like a Zaidi, he was a tyrant, grandpa. And he has his aides, his servants bring him 2 bowls, one filled with gold nuggets, one filled with hot coals. And he puts it in front of Moshe, and Moshe, being the brilliant future leader, puts his hand towards which bucket? The gold, the shiny gold. But God doesn't want Paro to realize that Moshe is extraordinary at this young age. So an angel comes and shoves Moses' hand onto the coals, and he puts his hand in his mouth because it's burnt, and that's how he gets a lisp. That's why he tells God later, "You're sending me to Paro?" That can't even talk clearly. What are you sending me? They're going to make a mockery of me. I'm no leader. I don't even speak nicely. I don't have communication skills. I have a lisp, a terrible lisp. Which comes to also show you that how is a person judged? By their lisp, by their disability? No, by who they are. Moshe couldn't speak clearly. His brother Aaron, the other brother, was an articulate orator. Moshe, he was a prophet. He was the greatest leader ever, but you can't say he had good communication skills. He had this disability. It happened to him at a very young age when they try to see if he's a future leader or not. So this is who Moshe is. But I want to, before we go on to the next chapter of who Moshe is, I want to share with you another story of a Moses and a non-Jewish person who saved him. Do you remember the Mumbai attacks on the Chabad house?
Yeah.
The Mumbai, remember they first, right? So they sent terrorists into the Chabad house in Mumbai. Rabbi Gavriel and Rivki Holtzberg were the rabbi in Rebbitzin. They had a 2-year-old son, Moses, and his nanny was Sandra. Now, when the terrorists entered the building, they immediately slaughtered Rabbi and Rebbitzin Holtzberg, and little Moshe was with them, and his nanny was hiding because if she would come out, they would kill her too. They didn't know. Suddenly, she hears him calling out. She hears him crying. So she, against her better judgment of saving her own life, which she wasn't even Jewish, she runs out, grabs Moshe, and runs out of the Chabad house.
Oh my God.
And saves his life. The same story with a Moshe and a non-Jewish nanny comes to light generations later. It's amazing. Think about it. The same story practically, the same Moshe. So you never know, the sparks that were created then continue in the future. The energy, the sparks allowed another Moshe to be saved by, again, a non-Jewish nanny, Sandra. And she moved to Israel with his maternal grandparents, Rabbi and Rebbitzin Rosenberg in Jaffa, and she lives with them. They take care of her. And he just celebrated his bar mitzvah last year, Moshe, in Israel. Could you imagine?
Wow.
And they say he will be the future Chabad rabbi of Mumbai when he reaches maturity. He's going to be a leader himself. I want to just share with you a beautiful story about his mother. I read this. I was going to tell it on the class that I missed, but it's just too beautiful not to share. May I?
Yes.
So everyone said this young couple, Gabi and Rivka Holtzberg, were really from the hidden tzaddikim of this world. And they were taken in a very cruel way. There's many details to the story. The Israel Shin Bet knew about the attack, and they asked the Indian government if they could come in, and they didn't let them, and it was too late then. They knew there was going to be an attack in India. You know, they had the intelligence. Okay, without going into that, God has his ways. Now, Rivki Holtzberg was a gem. The stories that are coming out of this Gabi and Rivki, I can only say that they are tzaddikim. They are saints, sages, prophets, I don't know what you want to call them, holy people. So there was an Israeli, you know, a lot of Israeli students go out of the army, right? They're 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They graduate from the army. They're forced to be in the army. I mean, that's the culture of Israel, right? Everybody is recruited in the army. And after that, they look for a little excitement. They go to Thailand, they go to India, they go to all these wild places. So this Israeli girl came out of the army and she wants a little adventure. She goes to India and she got involved in drugs. And so they put her in jail for drugs. She finally is given like in-house arrest. And she can't leave the country. She's stuck in India now. You know, they're not exactly the nicest people. So she goes to the Chabad house. She's somehow able to go there for services. And she tells Rivki his story. I really need to get out of the country. I need to leave. But how could I leave? The minute I come to the border, they'll see who I am. And they won't let me in to Israel. They won't let me leave. She says, I have an idea. She gives her a beautiful dress. And she gives her diamond ring from her wedding. Rivki Holtzberg gives this girl, a former drug addict, this ring and this dress. And says, go to the border, to the border. They'll see you dressed like a mensch with a ring. They're not going to question you. They're not going to look up your records. And you'll be able to get home. And that's what she did. She came to the border in a beautiful dress, beautiful diamond ring. That's no druggie. And she, with God's miracle, she gets back home. Rivki's mother comes to visit her. She says, Rivki, I noticed you're not wearing a diamond ring. Where's your diamond ring, Tatala, Mamala? She says, oh, it's doing a mitzvah now. She tells her mother, it's doing a mitzvah. Her mother, she thinks she's making a joke. She lost it and she doesn't want to tell her mother. Who knows? By Shiva, they sat Shiva in Eretz Yisrael for their children because they were both Israeli citizens, Rivka and her husband Gabi. And one of the visitors is this girl who was in prison in India. And she gives them a box with a diamond ring. And it's Rivka's ring. And she tells them the story. And the mother starts to cry about her daughter. She says, my daughter told me her ring was doing a mitzvah. So this is who his parents were. You know, who's his parents? So can you imagine? Moses' parents, Yocheved and Amram, were prophets. Rivki and Gabi, this Moses also had holy parents. I mean, a story like this, who would give their diamond ring, a girl, a druggie? She's going to sell it and buy drugs. I would never want to be tested like that. You know what I mean? So this is who they were. So, you know, there's a saying that from Moses till Moses, there was never such a great Moses. They mean Moses Maimonides. But you never know. Min Moshe ad Moshe. You never know which Moshe. There's never been another such a great Moshe. So it also reflects beautifully on someone who's not of the Jewish faith. Look how the kindness of a person who could have ran out of the building. So look, I'm not Jewish. Don't come after me. You're after the Jews. I know. Beautiful story. And it touches me so deeply. When I read the story, I was like blown away. I wish I could be in a quarter of that level, you know? But now Moshe grows up. He's the prince of Egypt. And he's the one chosen by God, as we'll soon see, to take the Jews out of Egypt. Now, let me ask you a question. If you want to send someone to take your brethren out of Egypt, who do you send? You send a boy who grew up in an Egyptian palace with a silver spoon in his mouth? Or do you send a nice Yiddish guy who grew up on gefilte fish with schmaltzherring and matzo balls, who speaks the language? Who do you send to take the Jews out of Egypt? You send a nice Yiddish boy. He comes in, he speaks the lingo, he knows the words, he knows how to say blintzes and schmaltzherring and gefilte fish and kichlach. He knows how to talk to his brothers and sisters because he also grew up as a Jew, you know? You're sending a sophisticated guy who grew up in the palace. Does he even know what it is to lift a hammer? Does he even know how to saddle a horse? Who are you sending Moshe? Right? Question one. Now we're going to answer this question soon. So Moshe is a grown man, and what happens? Three stories happen with Moshe. One, he's walking amongst his people in Goshen, and he sees, of course, the torture and the misery, and he sees an Egyptian taskmaster, a Nazi. You think the Nazis came with Hitler? We have Nazis here with Paro too, Yamach Shemam. He's about to kill a Jew, most probably the Jew didn't work fast enough, or didn't took a minute to rest or took a drink of water, and he's beating the Jew. The Jew's about to die. Moshe takes and kills the Egyptian taskmaster, and he buries him right then and there, and he saves the life of a fellow Jew. Story number one. This Egyptian prince could have said, you know what? I'm going to inherit the kingdom in a couple of years. I'm next in line to the king. Pharaoh didn't really have, he had sons, but maybe Moshe could have theoretically been the next king. And when I take over, I'll save the Jewish people. Now's not the time to take action. One Jew, I don't know if it's worth my time, but he doesn't care. One Jewish life is going to be taken by this guard. When I'm around, boom, he kills the guard. Fast forward a little while later, he's again strolling around. He sees now a worse scene. Two Jewish men are fighting. They're beating each other up. And he says, I want to read it to you. This is what he says to them. Two men of the Hebrews were fighting together. And he says to the wicked one, are you going to kill your fellow Jew? So the wicked one says to him, who made you a ruler and a judge over us? You think you're going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian? He tells them, word got out that Moshe killed an Egyptian. You're going to kill me now too? He says to Moshe, and look what happens. Vayira Moshe, and Moshe became frightened. And he says to himself, Achein noida hadavar, the word has gotten out that I killed an Egyptian taskmaster. Look what happens next. Vayishma Parai, Paro heard. The Jews tattled on him. They said, do you know your grandson just killed an Egyptian taskmaster? And he sought to slay Moses. He put out an arrest warrant. So Moses fled and he went to Midian. See what happens here? This is a very important story, which I'm going to explain in a minute. Story number 2 of Moses' courage. Story number 3 of his courage. He comes to Midian. He comes to the well. What else is new? Not he comes to the bar, to the inn. He comes to the well. And he sees the male shepherds are bullying these 7 girls, these 7 shepherdesses, the daughters of Jethro. And he says to these bullies, get away, allow them to water their sheep. They wouldn't let them water their sheep. They were threatening these girls. It didn't start here in our generation. This was happening in the olden days too. So Moshe says to these bullies, really? And he scares the wits out of them, and he allows the daughters of Jethro to water the sheep, and that's how he ends up meeting his future father-in-law, and he says, no, my beautiful oldest daughter, Tzipporah, let's make a shidduch. And he marries Tzipporah. But let's go quickly back to the other story. It doesn't say when he killed the Egyptian that he feared, he was afraid. You notice? It only says after they say to him, oh, you're going to kill me too? And Moshe said, oh no. They know what I did. The word has gotten out. And he flees because Paro puts an arrest warrant out for him. They tattle. Obviously, one of the Jews tattled on him. And one of these, obviously not from the better people, and now he has to run away, escape. So now there's a magnificent, mystical, beautiful insight from Chassidus. He didn't run away after it happened. He runs away after the 2 guys tell him, one of the guys tells him, you're going to kill me too? A fear enters in his heart at that moment. He says that it's known, and he runs away because Paro urges him. Till he felt fear, till he felt insecurity about what he did. Not that he regretted it. Let me just reiterate, he did not regret, but he felt a fear. Nothing happened. So Chassidus, based on Kabbalah, says something very powerful. The Maggid says, one of the Hasidic rabbis writes, we create our own reality. It's a very, 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 very powerful thing. My image, I reflect what I think, what I am. What I think creates my reality. And it's something, we all have to think about because it's hard to comprehend. Again, how you envision things, how you react to things creates your reality. Till Moshe was afraid, nothing happened. The minute he felt fear and insecurity, it brought about a series of events. Paro sends a search warrant out for him. That's why the Torah never tells us what people are thinking or their emotions. Very rarely in the 5 books of Moshe do you hear them say, Diane was thinking she should go on vacation. Margaret was thinking she's now going to take revenge. They never tell you what people are thinking. When the Torah tells us what Moshe's thinking, it's to teach us these insights, that it is how he viewed himself that now created that negative energy where now Paro issues a warrant for his arrest. If you understand this, or even you think about it, you realize how you can create your reality. I'll give you an example. There was a Rebbe walking with a student, and he went, ay, 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 the Yiddish krechts, we call it. Now, let me ask you, who here in this class doesn't give out a krecht, a sigh, a moan? If you don't, you're not Jewish. If you don't kvetch, you're not Jewish. I'm sorry, it's part of our DNA. We all go, ay, vey, mama, tata, old, right? Anybody else have any other moans and groans? Yeah, anybody? Go ahead, give a moan and a groan. No. We all have like all these mannerisms, Yiddish mannerisms. He says, a broch auf sein Kopf, nicht eingedacht, my Baba would say. Okay. So what is it? So the Rebbe says to his student, why are you bringing negative energy into the world? What are you doing? He says, Rebbe, all I did was sigh. The Rebbe said, do you know that with every sigh, you create a negative energy that impacts everybody? So again, how we review ourselves and view life creates our reality. I'll tell you the story of Woody Woodpecker. You remember the story? You remember the story? I told it once before. I'll tell it again. You know the cartoon Woody Woodpecker? Okay. How did it come about? So this couple, very out-of-the-box couple, decide to go on a honeymoon. The parents say, go to the islands, go on to Paris. No. They decide they're going to go deep, deep into the woods and rent a cabin, and they're going to do a very rustic honeymoon. And you know what? They're loving it till they go to bed at night. They finally go into their cozy honeymoon bed. They close their eyes, and outside the window, a Woody Woodpecker starts pecking away on the tree. A ganze Nacht. The woodpecker is chopping and butting in the they can't sleep. They turn over on the left, they turn over the right. Can't sleep. A whole night, the woodpecker has kept them awake, this honeymoon couple. But they're an optimistic couple. They wake up in the morning, they drink strong coffee, they have a wonderful day, and they go, tonight will be the night. A ganze Nacht again, that woodpecker are hacking away. And this happens again the third night. and their honeymoon. They had a good time. They were a loving, happy couple, but come on, we didn't sleep a wink on our honeymoon. They get in the car, and the husband thinks the wife is going to let him have it. And the wife thinks the husband is going to let her have it. What about this great idea for the honeymoon? Whose idea was it? Your idea. Wow. Next time you come up with a brilliant idea. But no, the wife and the husband spend the whole ride home laughing. We had a great time, honey. This is going to go down in the history of our grandchildren. How every night we were up with the woodpecker. And guess what? Walter Lanz in 1940 decided to create a comic called Woody Woodpecker, and he made millions of dollars. So we create our reality. Trust me, if it was me, would my husband get it with 2 barrels? I would even go in the car home with him. I'd say, I'm getting a lift home with somebody else. Crazy idea. A honeymoon in a cabin with a woodpecker as our third party. But they created a reality that turned them into millionaires, but you see, it's their whole attitude. So attitude changes can change our reality. There's a whole, by the way, therapy that you have to envision what you want for yourself, envision what you want for your children. Sit down. You want your daughter to get married. Sit down and envision your daughter in a wedding gown by a beautiful buffet with a tall, dark, handsome guy with a huge bank account walking down the aisle. And then it's going to happen. That's what I was told by many people. Tell me you have to envision goodness happening in your life. You know? So it's called visual therapy or something. But anyway, so we create our reality. When Moshe feared at that moment, everything spiraled out of control and he had to run away. So that's why the Tzemach Tzedek said this famous saying, Trach gut wird sein gut. Think good and it will be good. And I don't know how it works, but ladies, it works. Many people are ill, they wear bracelets because it gives them a lift. People will get this little like rubber bracelet, like Lance Armstrong bracelet. This is Trach gut wird sein gut, which is interesting because how did this come about? The Tzemach Tzedek, one of the Lubavitcher Rebbes, his name was Menachem Mendel. The present Rebbe was named after the Tzemach Tzedek. He had a father, a chassid, came to him with a very, very sick child. And the father says, Rebbe, what should I do? And the Rebbe says to him, Trach gut wird sein gut. Think good and it will be good. And guess what? The child was healed. We don't know how, but the child was healed. We can create our reality. It takes effort, it takes work, but we can do it. So now I have 2 more very beautiful insights. Moving forward, does anybody have any questions, comments, debates? You're the nicest group of ladies. You never argue.
Wasn't it realistic for him to now realize that if that other guy knew that he had killed the Egyptian, everybody knew, so he had to leave? I mean, even if he had an extra positive attitude, it wasn't going to change the circumstances.
All right. That's a very, very good question. And actually, I don't know if I have a perfect answer, but based on what we discussed, that this piece of Hasidus explains that is the reason now only he's afraid. You could sometimes do an act that's justice. I'm going to kill this guard. He almost killed he would have killed the Jewish man. And then you feel, oh, I'm so scared. Who's going to find out? They're going to find out. They're going to know that because the Torah doesn't say it right then, but it says it later, and only then Paro issues a warrant. That shows us that based on this Hasidic insight or this Hasidic discourse, that the reality was created by his fear. And that if he wouldn't have expressed fear, it might have been different. It might have been different. That's basically what this Hasidus is saying. But even if you would choose to say what you think, like what you just said, Margaret, which is very logical, let's say we didn't learn this piece of Hasidus. The story says he was afraid, somebody tattled, and then he had to run because there was an arrest warrant for him, right? Yeah, that's the story. If you wouldn't study this Hasidus, you wouldn't have this insight, but the story makes sense in its very literal way. He ran away, yeah, that's why he ran away. When I was growing up again in yeshiva, they never taught us this. This is something I, read in a Hasidic Discord, and I thought it was very powerful to share again, because showing us that we could change or create our reality, But again, it's what I would call something. It's not. Also, a lot of times we study this. It's not something that happens in a second. You don't become an optimist just because we studied in the Torah. Optimism is the way to go. It's all study is to bring us to look at our lives differently, and in very small increments make changes. Like I try always in my life. Like when I heard the story of the Rebbetzin in Holzberg, it impacted me in a way, thinking myself, on how could I be a little bit of a kinder, more giving person? Because if she could give up her diamond ring to a girl who's questionable behavior, so much more I could do, like something that I'm not giving up my diamond ring. So again, all learning is there to bring us to refine ourselves, to make ourselves better, happier people, more in touch with who we are, what we want to be, and how we can impact other people, and then we really impact ourselves. So, so again, everything is there to give us a way of looking at things differently, so to speak. You know what I mean? So that's how I look at it. Sometimes I listen, I literally, I was studying a discourse last night I wanted to share today, just giving you an insight of my preparation. And I'll tell you right now, I couldn't put two words together to repeat it. I try to put it together, like, how am I going to say this if I don't even get it? So I went to sleep, and this morning, I woke up very early in the morning, and I reread it, and I'm like, I get it, and I'm going to share it now. I didn't get it last night. I have to tell you, my brain, I said, listen, I'm not sharing it if I don't get it. How could you share something if you don't yourself get it? It doesn't make sense to me. How is it going to make sense to you? So my point is, without me going on and on, is that some things you need to think about a little longer. I'm talking about myself, and then you can internalize it. It doesn't always happen the first time around. Also, like Hasidus, studying Torah with Hasidus and Kabbalah takes you on a different train track. You're always going one way. The minute you start studying the nuances, now a whole different direction or portal opens up how you look at life and things, which normally you wouldn't, let's say. So that's the beauty of studying Torah with Hasidus and Kabbalah and typical commentaries. The typical commentaries are not so typical, they're also, it's beautiful. It's also very insightful, right? I hope you agree. I mean, yeah. So we spoke about trach gut v'zayin gut. So think good and it will be good. I don't like to quote Henry Ford, but you know what Henry Ford said? If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. It's, in other words, how you think you could be, you'll be. If you think you're going to fail the test, you're going to fail the test. Like I was about to take a test, and the math teacher told my mother I'm going to fail. And my mother was very upset. She says, how do you know? She didn't even take the test. I failed. The teacher already I heard the teacher tell me, of course I failed. My mother was furious at the teacher. But I said, Ma, it's my fault. I didn't know the math, That's the story. It's not the teacher's fault. She just predicted, my lack of knowledge, So,
Can you hear me? Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead. You want to say? Yeah.
I did, but now I can't find you. So you said something very interesting. We're surrounded by negative energy all the time. And it's hard sometimes to maintain your positive energy. You want to infect other people with the positive light, and it's hard to like brush off all the negative stuff. And so this is very interesting. You really need a bracelet, a sign, a reminder, an inspiration to keep that going.
You know, also, I was telling somebody, we were discussing working, you know, circle of friends, and she said, could that person come? And I'm like, no. That person's very negative, and every idea and every aspiration or dream is knocked down because, oh, it's not practical, we don't have the money. And it pulls you down, because when you work in nonprofit work in general, it's always working on miracles. You're never going to have the money. You have to work on a level where you think to yourself, listen, God, I'm doing the good work, make it happen, because I'm doing it anyway. So people who can't work on that level, and not only they can't work on the level, they drag down the dreamers and the people who are inspired. You try to stay away. You can't always. Sometimes it's family members. Can you kick them out of the house?
Oh, it's always family members.
Absolutely. Sure is.
Sometimes, though, you know, I'm always trying to work on this, and I work on it through Torah, I work on it through yoga, and I create this reality, and it is an alternate reality, and it doesn't come true, and then all of a sudden my house of cards crumbles. So, you know, I don't know where you have to be realistic. You know, I went for this job interview a couple of months ago, and I was sure I had it. It was my job. I was acting like I had the job. I was spending like I had the job. I didn't get the job. And I know that I'm capable of doing this job. But then my daughter looked at me and went, Ma, you haven't heard from them. And how old are you, Ma? And then my house of cards crumbled. Like it's just, it happens to me a lot, because I try to create the positive. So where is that line where you have to be in reality too?
Well, let me tell you this. This is what I'm coming to now. Exactly your question, which ties in now. So do you mind if we take a pause just so I bring this point to chorus? Because exactly what you addressed.
Please.
So have you ever seen the movie A Beautiful Mind by John Nash? Okay. So I was going to tell this after I told the story with Moshe and the burning thorn bush, but I'm going to tell the story, and then we're going to go to the thorn bush, because it's exactly what you had. So first of all, the movie's spectacular with, what's his name? Russell Crowe. Oh, amazing. The book also. So just for those of you who don't know about John Nash, he won the Nobel Prize for mathematics and economics. Brilliant guy in Sweden. To make a whole story short, he's schizophrenic, which, as you know, can be treated, but it's really, at times, you enter this dark, crazy place, and there's nothing you could do. And the movie is spectacular. His wife divorces him, not because she doesn't love him, but because it's so intolerable. And part of his schizophrenia, the communists are after him. So he has a whole garage with papers showing the conspiracy theories. And he's so brilliant, he draws a parallel to everything with mathematics. It's mesmerizing the crazy, but you see that the mind distorts the whole universe for him. In spite of that, he's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant mathematician. And he goes into these dark places, and you think and the movie is so great because you think he's actually happening to him, but it's not, it's in his head. Anyway, okay, this is the point I want to make, Jane. So his wife remarries him. She loves him so much, she says, I'm going to live with this. And she's there with him, and he gets up to receive the reward. And he says, do you know what as he takes the word, he says, you know what the greatest equation of all mathematics and economics is? He says it's equals love. And he points to his wife, because he can only get this award because of her support in his nutty world, his nutty mind is. And they're leaving the hall. And obviously either his medication wears off, as the book tells it, or again, he goes into that very dark place where his wife sees in his eyes that he's not there anymore. He's in his schizophrenic stage. She says, John. She says to him, is everything all right? And she knows it's not. And he gives her the most beautiful smile and he says, darling, it's absolutely perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Why am I telling you this story? Because Moshe is shepherding the sheep. I'm going to tie it all on, Jane, to your answer. And he comes, a sheep is lost, a little baby sheep. Now, his father-in-law is a multi-billionaire. Does he really need to chase down one sheep? But yeah, he does, because he's a shepherd, and one sheep lost is one sheep lost. And he finds this little baby sheep, and suddenly he sees a sight, a burning thorn bush. Note the thorn bush. It's not a beautiful azalea tree, a palm tree. It's a thorn bush. And as he gets closer, a voice comes out of the thorn bush, and he says, Moshe, Moshe, take off your shoes. You're standing in a holy place. And it's obvious he's hearing the voice of God. And then God tells him the whole conversation. You're gonna go and you're gonna take the Jews out of Egypt. And Moshe says, who, me? I'm nobody. I don't talk. I'm a younger brother. I don't have the prestige. Who's gonna listen to me? Blah, blah, blah. The whole story. Well, not blah, 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 but we'll go through it if we have time. And again, he finally accepts the mission, and you know the story. He goes back to Egypt and saves the Jewish people. And the question is, why a thorn bush? God is coming to Moshe. This story changes the course of history. Moshe takes the Jews out of Egypt. Moshe gives them the Torah at Sinai and practically brings them to the borders of Israel. Moshe, you couldn't find a more glamorous, more prestigious, pretty way to come to Moshe with a mission, a thorn bush. And the reason is we have to find perfection in life, even amongst our thorns. Even amongst our thorns, you find perfection. This is why God talks to Moshe. A fire is burning, but why isn't the thorn bush consumed? Because no matter how thorny your life is going to get, you will never, ever be consumed, God tells Moshe. The Jewish people will never be consumed by the fires, no matter how thorny life gets. The genocide, the persecutions. Now, sometimes we envision for ourselves perfection. I want that perfect job. It's perfect for me. I think I really need to go on that trip. It's exactly what I need. And we do the meditations and we do the prep work. And we envision ourselves on the beach, right? And suddenly the plane gets canceled, somebody gets sick, we can't go, we didn't get the position, my husband got fired. What do you mean, God? I did everything right. I had the meditations, I envisioned because at times that's not what you were meant to be. The perfection is not always found in what we envision is our perfection. Sometimes it's in the thorns. Well, usually it's in the thorns that our perfection emerges. It's just us looking at it differently. And that's why sometimes you have to question, I did everything right, God. Why did you punish me in this way? People ask this question every single day. I deserved better, God. We don't know why. But then once these things are thrust upon us, these challenges, these thorns, we have to find perfection in those thorns. And there's a reassurance that you will never, never be engulfed. You will never be burned out. Your bush will never, never be extinguished. You will never disappear. God promises that. That's why the bush is not extinguished. And that's why a thorn bush. Because when God says to Moshe, don't come any closer. The ground upon which you're standing is holy. Take off your shoes. It's very weird. What do you mean? Why is the ground holy? The fire, God, is in the bush. He should say, Moshe, don't touch the bush. I'm in here. He says, the ground upon which you're standing is holy. Take off your shoes. What is God saying to Moshe? We think divinity, holiness, godliness is in the bush. It's in the shul. It's in the rabbi's class. It's at the Kotel. It's at the Machpelah where the matriarchs and patriarchs are buried. It's in the holy books. But in my mundane life, on King Street, with the dirty dishes in the sink, how could I find divine? Where is God? Precisely where you are, God says, is where it's holy. Not where I am, where you are, because I'm where you are. That's why you take off your shoes. You take off your shoes because where you are in life, in your dirty dishes, the dishwasher is broken, the laundry is piled up, your kids are screaming. That's where God is found. We think God is only in those holy moments. When we're fasting on Yom Kippur and the rabbi blows the shofar, I am so holy, God. I never felt so holy in my life. True holiness is found in your mundane, imperfect life, in your thorns. This is what Chassidus and Torah is teaching us. We sometimes think again, you know what the problem with thinking that holiness is only found on those mystical places is, then what are you doing the rest of the 363 days of your life? Is your 363 days of your life meaningless because it's not Yom Kippur anymore? Because you broke your fast, you had your bagels and lox, the shofar blowing is over. Now, the rest of the year, I'm nothing. Next Yom Kippur, okay, we'll start again. We'll be holy again for one day, and it's over. Yiddishkeit, our soul goes wherever we are. God goes wherever you are. Wherever you are is where God goes. And that's why, and again, not to, God forbid, say, you didn't get the job or you didn't go on that vacation because you didn't have the right prep work. No, lav dafka. But one little insight I did share, and I'll share for myself, is that how do the mundane things in life become holy? What defines you differently from another person is the fact that among those simple things in life, you bring in the holy moments, the Moda Ani in the morning. You know, when you wake up in the morning, you sit up in your bed and you say, Moda Ani lifanecha, thank you, God, for returning my soul. And then you wash Negelwasser, al natilat yadayim. That little act for 3 minutes will now define your entire day and imbue your entire day with holiness. So you have to make sure amongst the mundane things in life, they are tied like pearls. You know, when my pearl necklace ripped and there's a knot between every pearl. Why? Because if one rips, the rest don't fall off. How do you create that strand of pearls? What ties it together? Those moments when you commit yourself by doing a mitzvah. Mitzvah means connection. By saying a prayer. Even if you put a nickel a day in the tzedakah box, you will have another knot by your pearls. Anything you do to connect to the divine, to your soul, then when you're washing dishes, when you're trading stocks, when you're writing a story, or you're painting a sculpture, whatever profession or whatever hobby, or you're darning socks. We don't darn socks anymore, do we? Please tell me you throw them out. That becomes holy too. You know why? Because it is not defined by just doing mundane. Your life is defined on a much holier level because you said Modani in the morning. You ate a kosher bagel. Do those little mitzvahs, and now everything you do will now become part of a beautiful tapestry instead of just being a bunch of little pieces floating around and they're not connected. The divine, the holiness, the mitzvahs, the connecting to our soul is what connects everything and makes it into a beautiful portrait. That's what differentiates us from everybody else. Because we all go to work, we all spend money, we all make money, we all pay our bills. So how are you different from any other creature living on earth? Because imbue those very mundane tasks with godliness, spirituality. Then wherever you are is holy. You don't have to go look for it somewhere else. And this is what the thorn bush is telling us, that we find perfection in our thorns. And you can't eliminate it because we all have moments of negative energy, moments when we're angry, upset, when we throw things. But sometimes, you have to kind of welcome your inadequacies instead of pushing them away. You know you're a Nebuchadnezzar. So welcome the fact that that I'm a Shlemazel and I'll be fine in life. So I had another beautiful insight, but it's already 11:10, so I don't want to keep everybody. But does anybody have any questions or anything they want to say? So I'll end off with one little thing that how it ends off with the thorn bush. By the way, this is precisely, let's end off on this note, why Moshe becomes the leader. Because look at his history. He's a prince, but he kills a guard to save a Jew. Then take it one step further, he creates unity among the Jewish people. He says, how could you be fighting with each other? You're two brothers. And lastly, he takes up the feminine cause. You're not bullying these girls at the well. You're not bullying these girls at the well. They have a right to be shepherds just like you. You want to know who fought for equality first? The people of the Torah, Moshe. And that's what makes him a Jewish leader. And a man who is a shepherd, and he goes find the little sheep. He could have said, Yisro, yeah, a wild animal ate the little sheep. I'm not walking 25 miles to go find a lost sheep somewhere in the wilderness. And guess where that wilderness was? Mount Sinai, when he goes to the sheep. Because it's between Egypt and Midian is Mount Sinai. That's where he goes and sees the burning bush. And lastly, God doesn't want our leaders to be perfect. Yes, Moshe, you're not the best communicator, but I don't need a leader that doesn't have a lisp. I need a leader that has integrity, compassion, love, and does everything possible for his people. And that's who Moshe was. You're looking for perfection, that's not what God wants from us. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been in a thorn bush. God would have met him in the Museum of Natural History with beautiful architecture, champagne in the corner, someone playing on the harp. And then he says, you will be my leader, Moses, dressed in a tux. So each one of us has, as it says, a piece of Moses within ourselves. Each Jewish person has a part of Moses in us. We can all be leaders, and leaders of compassion and leaders of goodness and defenders of our people in whatever way we do it. So let me wish everyone a good Shabbos, a wonderful week.